Hey, listen, we're really fortunate to have David Bleckman, who is an incredible commercial photographer, very talented guy. And just to look, you can look at his bio. You'll see a tremendous amount of things that he's done. Just a couple things. I mean, he shot everything from the Hilton, the White House. He shot celebrities like let's see. Let me actually. I'm going to take a look here. Beyonce, Christina Aguilera, Jimmy Buffett. Just Kiss. He's just shot tons and tons and tons of well-known people, and he shot me as well, which is pretty cool. So anyhow, David, hey, welcome so much
Thanks.
to the summit. Hey, so here's what I want to do. Everybody's talking about fashion. People know what fashion models do. Maybe we can just really quickly, or have you describe some of the differences between fashion modeling and commercial modeling, and then I'm going to start asking you more questions about what models should be expecting, how they can get booked, and things like that.
Okay. Well, I would say right off the bat, one of the main differences between commercial modeling and fashion modeling is, have you ever seen a fashion model walk down the runway and smile? People say to me all the time, how come they always look so unhappy? Well, because in fashion modeling, it's not about the model, it's about the clothing. It's not about the model making contact with the audience. It's about the audience making contact with the fabric, with the clothing, with the style. So in fashion modeling, the model is nothing more than a mannequin carrying the fashion down the runway, wearing the fashion during an ad campaign. It's all about the fashion. In commercial modeling, even though it's still not all about the model, commercial modeling, as you obviously taught me years ago, Aaron, is acting without words. You're playing a part. And with commercial modeling, even though it is a single snapshot in most cases, you have to be able to convey an emotion, you have to be able to convey a feeling, you have to be able to maybe set the context. So there's a little bit more acting involved in commercial modeling, because in a single snapshot or in a series of a few pictures, you have to convey to your audience what you're feeling, what you're doing, what you may be trying to accomplish. Where in fashion modeling, you're simply a mannequin carrying the clothing down the runway, or something that we're hanging the clothing on for an ad.
Yeah, and the thing that's also so cool with commercial modeling is that you just see us everywhere. I mean, we're on billboards and posters, on the sides of buses, on the internet, on junk mail, brochures, and also you can be any age. You can be an infant, you can be in your 90s, and still work as a commercial model. So maybe we can kind of start at the very beginning here, as far as when a commercial project is beginning to happen. We see the models, we see things from the time we get a phone call from our agent saying, either you have a go-see or you've got the job. But from your perspective, because you see things way before we do. I mean, I'm like the last person to even hear about the job. How does the job develop? Who comes up with the idea? Who gets in touch with you? Maybe you can just shed some light on that for us.
It's an interesting question, and there's no one single answer, because there was a time where almost every manufacturer or every distributor or anybody that needed a commercial ad photograph, they would get in touch with an ad agency. An ad agency would then maybe get in touch with a model agency, give the model agency the demographics of what they're looking for as far as the type of people, and then I simply get a phone call to maybe bid on the job, and if I get the job, I'm provided with the models, the location, and everything else. There's other instances where a client may contact me directly, and they may not go through the ad agency. The economy sometimes dictates the process. Just like there was a time where people would go get business cards printed for maybe 75 bucks a thousand, and now they'll print them themselves at home because they could save a few bucks. Every industry is pretty much the same. There are those that will go a professional route most of the time and go through an ad agency that goes through a model agency, and there are times where a client may come to me first and say to me, this is what we're looking to do. We need 3 models. We want an Asian, and we want a Caucasian, and we want an African American, or we want a 29-year-old Caucasian woman and a 13-year-old Caucasian daughter and a 25-year-old Asian male. And they'll see who I know that's available first. So sometimes I may get the flexibility of choosing, or at least providing them with talent that they can choose from. Other times it's totally out of my hands.
And I assume that sometimes, like you were talking about economics, it's, I assume the less people you have involved, the more economical it can be. But I would think that sometimes they would contact you directly for two other reasons. One is they trust you and they know that you have worked with so many different models that you would very easily be able to find the right person for the job, and you could do it faster because for you, they're not like 10 different steps that have to that you'd have to go through. Basically, you would just make a phone call or send out an email saying, hey, look, I think you'd be perfect for this job. We've worked before. Are you available?
You know,
And
it's funny
there
you
you go.
say that because back in the days where they were shooting West Wing here and some of the other television series, there were certain casting agents that would actually come to me to say, who do you know that could be a doctor? Who do you know that could play a cop? Who do you know could be this? Because sometimes their talent pool wasn't as big as what I had accomplished over the last 35 years. Um, the other thing is that I'm a little bit different when I choose who I'm going to work with, especially models. Looks is number 4 or 5 on my list. You know, it all starts with reliability, then responsibility, then how accessible they are, and then how respectful they are of the people that's trying to give them work. And then looks is number 5. So my talent pool, you know, everybody has to have a way of weeding out who they're going to work with. Casting agents, model agencies, commercial photographers like me, acting coaches like you, we get comp cards, we get headshots, we get things sent to us all the time, and you can't work with everybody. And my system for deciding who I'm going to work with or who I'm even going to keep on file starts with the first 4 things I mentioned: reliability, responsibility, accessibility, and respect. And that's where it starts. So I think when people come to me looking for talent, they know that I'm a little bit more, some people may use the word arrogant. It's not an arrogance, it's a filtering system because everybody wants to work with good, reliable people. And that's the people that I keep in contact with.
So when people come to you, because not only will you cast and shoot models for ads, but you also do test shots
Do a lot of
for
training.
models as well. So I would assume that, in some ways you are even more desirable than other photographers who, really might not have an opportunity to really hire somebody. So I guess if somebody's looking for a test shot, it's almost like a little introduction to somebody who could potentially, get them a paid gig in the future.
Right. And everybody that I work with, every model that I test with, there's an education process because they don't all know how to pose. They don't all understand hand position, feet position, leg position, knee position, head position. So when I'm working with somebody, whether it's the first time they're modeling or whether they've been modeling for years, I'm going to try to help them have a better camera presence. I'm going to try to help them have a better understanding of what's involved or what's needed in commercial modeling. And I would say where most people lack is education in posing. And I would say the number one thing that models need to work on is expression. The hardest thing I find is for me to get people to be able to express themselves or to put forth the emotion that we're looking for. And that needs to be practiced, as you know.
So, yeah, so let me ask you, because I hear this a lot. People will say to me, I've always been interested in trying to do some kind of modeling, some kind of commercial modeling, but I just don't. I just don't look good in front of a camera. I mean, whenever we've done, family shots, I never look comfortable. I never look realistic. And, what I tell them is, look, there are some, specific techniques that you actually can. I mean, those are things that I teach, things, in my book. So when somebody comes to you, let's say somebody who perhaps really hasn't done very much, and if they are in a position where they can actually open up and say, look, I really need some help because I just don't know how to relax. What do you actually do with a model to get them to give a more genuine kind of look?
In most cases, it's meeting with them ahead of time. It's meeting with them at a coffee shop a week prior, a couple of days prior, a month prior. I try to meet with as many of my subject matter as possible early on. So they're not just meeting me for the first time when they walk into the studio. We discuss things. They know my personality. I know their personality. I may know a little bit about them. I may know that they have kids. I may know that that they're into snowboarding or they like to travel, and I can take all this information and use it on the set to try to get them to relax, to have a conversation about their kids, have a conversation about the last vacation they took. We have a saying in the photography industry that anybody can take a picture of what somebody looks like. A photographer's goal is to take a picture of what somebody is like. And if you don't know the person or you haven't had time to spend talking to that person, even if it's just an hour before the shoot, same day, that makes a big difference. Rapport is huge in getting somebody to relax, getting somebody to trust you. A new model comes on the set. She doesn't know if I shoot fast. Do I shoot slow? Do I yell? Am I arrogant? Do I think I know everything? Do I not believe in teamwork? Is it all about me? Or am I there really trying to get the best image of them, helping them relax? The pace is slower. We have a conversation. I give them tips. I help them along the way. So that rapport is a huge part of it.
Yeah, I would tend to think that if somebody's not feeling comfortable with you, or not with you, but with any photographer that they're going to, it's going to be impossible to get great shots because, I've always found that sometimes you can fool some of the people in the room during the session, but you're not going to fool the camera. And if you are feeling uptight and nervous and there's a lot of tension, it comes through in every photograph that you take. So I guess one of the things that would also be really helpful for people to hear is, let's say, they're setting up their first meeting, which I think is a great idea. And I think I realize it's in your best interest, but it's also very generous of you to be willing to spend the time working with people prior to, actually working with them. What kinds of questions would you like to hear a model ask you prior to saying, okay, I want to shoot with you?
First of all, going back to what you just mentioned about me taking the time to get to meet the people and talk to them, as a photographer, that shot is my responsibility. So it's actually in my benefit to take the time out of my schedule to meet with the talent ahead of time and to get to know her better. Because when I'm delivering images to a magazine or to an advertising campaign, they don't want to hear that the model wasn't relaxed. They don't want to hear me complain that the makeup artist didn't do what I told her. They don't want to hear that. I'm the photographer. I'm responsible for the final image. I'm the one that's either getting paid or not. So it's in my best interest to try to get to know the talent and to try to get a rapport going with them so that they're more relaxed and we both have a better understanding of what I'm trying to accomplish.
And just to kind of jump in, excuse me, I was just going to jump in for a second. And the other thing that's very interesting along those lines is your name and reputation is on every one of those photos. So when somebody's showing pictures to other people, whether it's, an agent, whether it's an art and creative director, whether it's just to friends and other actors and models, they're going to say, well, who shot it? Well, David Bleckman shot it. And so, yeah, you need to make sure that every photo that you do with somebody is phenomenal.
Right. Or the best you could possibly do. And I've never shot my best picture yet, and hopefully I won't till the time I take my last one, because you're always striving to get better. But to go back to your original question, what do I want to hear a model ask me? It's more, what do I want to see from the model? And what I want to see from the model is I want to see that she can return an email pretty quickly. At least within no more than 24 hours. But I want to see that if a model emails me today and wants to learn about how she can work with me and I write her back, I don't want her to respond to me 3 days later. If I call a model and I leave a voicemail for her, I expect to get a call back either that day or the next morning. This is such a time-sensitive industry. And I can weed out 99% of the models that want to work with me based on the fact that they don't return emails promptly, they don't return phone calls promptly, and that goes back to one of the 4 qualities I look for, and that's accessibility. So it's not so much what they ask me. I want to see them show up on time. I want to see them return my phone call. I want to see a hunger. I want to see an eagerness. Because you can send me 100 beautiful women, and I have to find a way to filter them out. And it's easier for me to eliminate them based on the fact that they're not eager, they're not hungry, they don't return a phone call, they don't return an email, they don't show up on time, than it is for me to decide who I'm gonna work with.
I was just
Most
kind of,
people
oh, I'm
eliminate
sorry.
themselves. They really do.
I was just wondering when you said don't show up on time, what exactly is your policy? And unfortunately, I've been in not too many, but a couple of situations where I'm working with another talent and I'm on the set and the other person's not there. And, I'm still on the clock. And now, we're into the second hour and the other model hasn't shown up. What exactly do you do when, you've hired somebody and they haven't called, they're not there, and you're, still waiting for them to walk through the door.
Typically, in my case, and I know I'm different than the way that a lot of other photographers operate, I don't have the problem with people not showing up for work or showing up on time, and I'll tell you why. If a talent wants to work with me, or if I have a project coming up and I think a model has great potential to be one of the models on the set, the first thing I do is I schedule a meeting with her at a public place, a Panera Bread, a coffee shop. If she's late for that meeting without a valid excuse, if she didn't call me and say I'm right around the corner, I'm stuck in traffic, or there was an accident on the Beltway, I mean, things happen. I understand that. But if she comes prancing in 15 minutes late, like there's nothing wrong, I'm just not going to use her. End of story. So my policy is, if you're coming to impress me, and I don't care if you're coming to see me or you're going for an interview as a bank teller, if you can't show up for the interview process, which the whole purpose is to impress somebody so you can get the work, if you can't do that on time without having a valid reason or making a phone call that you're running late, you're not going to get you're not going to get through the door the next time. Now, once I have established a relationship with you, or we have established the fact that you did show up on time, and now I want to use you for a project, typically what I do in my case, Aaron, is I have a contract to appear. I will make the model sign a contract. I state when she needs to be there, how she needs to be prepared, what she needs to bring, everything I could put in black and white. And if she's not on time or doesn't show up, there's monetary penalties. And since I started incorporating these contracts about 3.5 to 4 years ago, I have not had a problem because they know I'm serious. And I think a lot of it has to do with your reputation as a photographer, obviously as a model, but I don't have the time to play the waiting game anymore. And like you said, you're on the set waiting. There's a hairstylist on the set. There's a makeup artist on the set. There could be an art director, a set director. When I used to shoot for Water Everywhere, White House Black Market, sometimes we had 12 people. Somebody in charge of jewelry, somebody in charge of accessories, somebody in charge of this and that. You keep them waiting, forget it, you're done.
Yeah.
So if you can't show up on time for me for the interview process, I can't trust you to show up on time for a job.
Well, one of the things that's really nice that you do, because I've seen you do this at some of the workshops that you've done with me, is that you've got just a great handout that you give to everybody, and it makes it very simple, very clean. This is what you need to do. You talk about everything from, making sure you stay hydrated, make sure you get a good night's sleep, just figuring out what kinds of wardrobe to bring, what colors are best, what colors are
Right.
not so great for you. And then also, because I know we have to kind of wind this up a bit, but also sitting down and figuring out, especially if you're doing test shots for somebody's composite sheet or maybe for their agent's website, is what kind of looks will help sell them the best. And so, you're able to sit down and explain that to them. And if you don't have a photographer who either has that kind of knowledge or is willing to do that, it's going to make it very tough because, as you know, you can have the greatest shooter in the world, somebody who technically puts together, the most exquisite photos. But if they're not shots that are going to market you well and put you into the right category, then you're not going to get any work. So yeah, I mean, having your handouts are just very, very helpful to people, and I think it's really good when you are sitting down with a photographer just to hear what they have to say and what you can learn from the photographer, which I think will give you your best chance for walking out of a session with some really, really great photos.
And the
Hey,
thing is, with great
okay.
photos, if you're looking for commercial work, I don't want to see you standing in front of a purple curtain Uh, I had a gentleman once that sent me a comp card, and he was in a plumber's uniform, those Dickie clothes that you can buy at the store. He's holding a pipe wrench, standing in front of a purple curtain. That doesn't impress me. That's not going to impress many people. If you're looking for commercial work, you have to make sure your images look like ads. Period. I wanted to do a shoot with a model that I'm working with. I wanted to do a mother-daughter shot, and I wanted something where it was cold and it was chilly and we could bundle up. So we met yesterday outside at a location, and it was great weather because it was cold and there was wind, and we've got this beautiful shot of the mother zipping up their little daughter's ski jacket, smiling at her. The wind's blowing in their hair. You can see it's kind of a gray, chilly day. Well, all that stuff works together to make your images look like an ad. If I would have brought the mother and the daughter in my studio and put them in front of a white backdrop and shot her zipping up her coat, what is that telling everybody? Nothing. That
Yeah.
nobody invested the time to make this picture look real.
Yeah, no, I agree. Hey, listen, I know we have to wind things up, so I should probably ask Joel right now if we do have any questions from people attending the summit.
Yeah, we do actually, Aaron. So several people have written in, and let's go and just jump right into some of these. Phil from Boston, Massachusetts says, I just moved to the Boston area. How would you recommend I try to find a good commercial photographer to get some great test shots for my new comp card?
Well, first thing, obviously, are search engines. You can search for headshot photographers. You can search for commercial photographers. There are a lot of directories online, and there's so many of them. I'm not even going to mention one because they're out there. You can Google or go to Bing or go to your favorite search engine and do a search on model message boards. You can even search on photographer message boards. But assuming you go out there and you do a search, which isn't hard to do, and you start finding photographers in your area, the next most important thing is to look at their work, because that's really going to say a lot. And if if you go to their headshot section, they have 6 pictures, move on. You want to look for somebody that's working on a continual basis, that's proud of their work, that's going to have a decent sized portfolio for you to go up and make an intelligent decision as far as who you want to work with. So I can't imagine starting over without the internet. I mean, imagine starting a business today without the internet. Getting involved in modeling or acting or photography or anything, the internet is such an incredible tool. Use it. Use
Yeah,
Facebook, use social media to ask other people who they're using in the Boston area. I mean, everybody loves to chime in, good or bad, about experiences that they've had in any industry.
and just on a little side note to that, if you happen to hear of some kind of negative comment about somebody, don't necessarily think that the person really isn't very good. Look, there can always be one disgruntled, person out there who really can make life pretty difficult for people. So, check things out very carefully. And just another quick idea is I would also ask a number of different agents in the area. And not necessarily just one, but I would go to a number of the agents, and there are tons of them in the Boston area, and just ask them, who are some of the people that they would recommend. And if certain names keep popping up over and over again, like David said, check out their website. And even if you don't know anything technically about photography, you're going to be able to look at the photos and see, yeah, these people look good. They're interesting. There are very interesting expressions. So anyhow, I think that's just another way of going about finding photographers. And best of luck to you.
Okay. Angie from Egypt says, do you think there's much commercial modeling work for me in Egypt, or do you think I will need to travel to other areas for work? What is your opinion on Egypt, David?
Well,
Okay, well, you're not going to believe me, but I just got off the phone today with a photographer from Cairo, Egypt. I've had this guy that he's actually come to Maryland to train with me. He's cruised the Caribbean, the Bahamas with me. Um, do I know the Egyptian market? No, but at least I know one photographer that I can refer you to. But you know, I'm sure there's modeling work going on everywhere. I can't tell you what the Egyptian market is like. But again, it's all about research. Everybody has the internet. Do your due diligence. There's so many ways you can go out there and do your homework and check and see what might be available.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm really not familiar with that particular market, but certainly there are, there are many countries not that far from you that I'm sure also have different types of modeling work. So yeah, like David said, you just have to do some research and you can easily find out what's going on.
I would get some magazines that are produced over in Egypt, published over in Egypt. Look at the magazines, see who's advertising in those magazines, what companies are advertising in there. Contact the companies and ask them what advertising agency they went through to get into the magazine, or what PR company they're using. Because anybody that's advertising in a magazine typically is going through an advertising agency or a PR firm to put the materials together properly to submit to the magazine. So go to some of the advertisers and ask them who they're using.
That's a good
Okay.
idea.
We're kind of running short on time. Let me try to squeeze one more question in here. This is a good one from Kat, Johannesburg, South Africa. She writes, the last time I hired a photographer to do some commercial photos for my portfolio, he made everything look like fashion shots. How would you suggest I make sure I get my next photographer to take real commercial photos?
The problem is the word next, or the one photographer I use. Your portfolio cannot be one photographer, or all your work is going to look the same, because most of us have a certain style. If a model comes to me and says, I want you to shoot a portfolio, I'm like, you know what, I can do a couple of looks for you, but I'm going to recommend you to some other people too. So if you want your portfolio to avoid looking the same, or every shot to have the same vantage point or the same style or the same cropping, your portfolio has to be multiple photographers. And again, research. Look at the work. See who's shooting what. See who's some photographers that may have been credited in some local magazines in your area. A lot of times you look in a magazine, there's a photo, and there may be a little credit line as to who the photographer is. Look them up. But if you're serious about putting together a portfolio, especially a commercial portfolio, you need to work with as many different photographers as you can to get as many different looks. And a portfolio is never finished. As long as you're modeling and as long as you're looking for work, you are continually adding the best and getting rid of the worst. And
Hey,
speaking of
Kathy.
which,
Oh,
you're
okay.
better off with 10 great pictures than 20 mediocre pictures.
No, I agree. Hey, Kat, also one other thing to add to that, and I think David's points are really good. Um, just so you do know, I do offer private online coaching sessions, and I'd spend a couple of hours with you just going through figuring out what kinds of shots you should be doing. And basically, what would be incredible for you is once you've learned how to put together strong commercial photos, and whether it's through reading my book or doing a private session with me, then what you can do is search for some photographers in your area, and instead of asking them, what kind of shots do you think we should be doing? You're actually going to go in there with all the ideas, and you're going to sit down with the photographers and say, look, this is what I want to do. You've already practiced it. You know what kind of emotions, you know what kind of location, you know what props to bring in, you know what the shot's going to look like. And like David said, it's going to look like an ad. So basically, you are going to create these shots on your own without needing to have the photographer tell you everything. Let the photographer work on the technical aspects of the shoot. And certainly, I'm not saying don't ask for ideas, but when you know exactly how to create the strong commercial shot, it's going to completely change how you do your next sessions. David, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Good luck, everybody.